So Shabbat Shalom. It's really a pleasure to be able to be with you from here this morning, this evening, I should say, from my hometown where I grew up in Foster City, California, which is, you fly over it when you land at San Francisco Airport. So this morning, around 9:30 or so, I hugged my parents for the first time in 19 months. I have driven down to California. We had driven down to California after dropping our children at Jewish summer camp in Washington State, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the many advantages of being a dual citizen, as I've discovered, is that we can drive across the US border only now, really, on our US passports and return to Canada in a few weeks on our Canadian passports. My parents live in the San Francisco Bay Area and Sharon's in Los Angeles. We'll hopefully, God willing, be able to see them next Shabbos and spend that time with their community and congregation. I've known for weeks that my sermon tonight, delivered as it is from my parents' guest bedroom, would be about that first hug. I have thought of nothing else for more than a month. What I didn't know was how it would feel and what I would say about it after it happened. So these are those thoughts. King Solomon, the wisest of all men or all people in Torah, long ago taught us in the book of Ecclesiastes and Kohelet, which the Birds set to music in 1960s, that there is a time to embrace and a time to cease from embracing. The sequence of that is a significant one. There may be good causes at times to cease from embracing, and surely a plague of COVID-19 is one of them. But we must never forget that human contact is an ideal which for many has tragically been all too often unattainable during this past year and a half of the pandemic. Among the many images that will stay with me probably the rest of my life as I reflect and hopefully, God willing, eventually retell this story of this pandemic to my own grandchildren one day, will be those of grandparents waving to their children and their grandchildren from behind glass windows in long-term care facilities or through patio doors. We all saw those images. They each desperately wanted to hold each other, to wrap them in their arms and to let the other know they love, they care, it will be okay. But they could not. Glass separated us. A virus endangered us, and so we waved or we talked. But painfully, they could not, we could not touch, and something profound is unattainable and unavailable to be fully expressed without that touch, without that embrace. No matter how often I saw my parents on Zoom, nothing can replace the physical connection of a hug. I was reminded of that this morning so clearly. Rabbi Yosef Jacobson is a world-renowned scholar of Kabbalah, of Jewish mysticism, and I turned to his writings this week to try to understand why a hug is more powerful than words or a kiss or a longing look into the eyes of another. In teaching about the spirituality of a hug, he explains that there are 4 universally accepted forms of expressing love to another human being. The first is through words of affection, those 3 simple but powerful words, I love you. When uttered sincerely, they may have a transforming impact on a person's life. Words have always served as the basic tools for expressing our inner emotive experiences, and I love you are 3 very powerful ones. A second, maybe more powerful expression of love is, of course, a kiss. A genuine kiss contains an extraordinary energy and serves as the medium for communicating a deeply intense feeling that may not be grasped in words. Words can say, I love you, while a kiss declares, I love you more than words are able to say. A third, perhaps even more powerful expression of love comes in the form of a gaze. 2 people in love can gaze at each other for long periods of time across a room without uttering a sound. To reference another 60s folk band, Simon and Garfunkel, the sound of silence, when accompanied with a gaze, is sometimes louder than all the I love yous shouted from the rooftops. Eyes carry within them deep secrets of the soul. That's why most people feel uncomfortable when someone stares them in the eyes for more than just a few seconds. There is something of your soul that you can communicate to another human being exclusively through your eyes. I think, however, that this is actually lost or it's greatly diminished via Zoom. Physical proximity is also a key component to that particular love communication of a longing gaze. The fourth universally accepted method of expressing love is by means of an embrace, a hug. A hug demonstrates a solid and profound bond existing between two people embracing each other. Now, when asked which of these forms do children cherish most, children, if they can articulate it, will express and say that they enjoy being spoken to. They enjoy being spoken to, not at. And they certainly take pleasure from being kissed and being looked upon with tender affection. Yet more than anything, most children, especially infants, and in my experience, adults as well, cherish being hugged more than anything else. It supersedes the previous words, a kiss or a longing gaze. What's the secret of the hug? What is its power? Now, it may surprise you, or maybe not, but our rabbis have thought and written deeply about the power of a hug. In fact, no less a rabbi than the great Rabbi Isaac Luria, also known as the Ari, one of the great scholars of Kabbalah from mid-16th century Sfat, explains how the physical mechanics of a hug set it apart from all other forms of love communication. Part of Kabbalah, of course, is finding hidden meaning in words and in constructs that are right in front of us. And this teaching from that spiritual lens is right in front of us. It's in our hands. Well, really, it's in our arms. So take a moment and look at your arm for a moment, or you can look at mine if you want. It is, of course, with our arms and then our whole bodies that we embrace another person. For the Ari, there are three dimensions of an arm's embrace, and each encompasses three distinct parts of the body being embraced. And this is his Kabbalistic interpretation of that. When you embrace another person, the highest part of the arm, between the shoulder and the elbow, encompasses the entire side of the one being embraced, of being hugged. The middle part of a person's arm, the forearm, expands over the entire width to embrace the person's back. And finally, the palm and the fingers extend even further and cover a small part of the face of the embraced one, a handbreadth of the face. That's where it comes from. Lastly, and this is my own chidush on the Ari's teaching, the body comes into the mix to complete the embrace, to fully encircle the other, and when done in coordination with the intended recipient of your hug, two bodies combine in what philosopher Martin Buber would describe an I-thou moment, when two separate entities become something new and whole, and even holy, when they become one. My hug with my parents was like that. Something that has not existed for 19 months was created in that moment. It wasn't the same as hugs pre-pandemic. It carried with it nearly 2 years of yearning and angst and worry and trauma and unrequited affection. It was filled with tears and with joy and with pain, and it was overflowing with love. I am painfully aware that I am among the lucky ones. For many, even after 19 months, that hug is still elusive. It's still some time off away in the distance, if at all. For some, more than we can even imagine, that hug will never come. They lost loved ones to this virus, or having lost their parents before COVID emerged, they did not have them to go through it with them. And still others, alone and lonely and isolated because of the pandemic or in spite of the pandemic, have no one to hug or to hug them back. And my heart, it truly breaks for all who have not or will not experience what I was so fortunate to feel this morning as my parents held me in their arms and I held them in mine. I understand that pain now better than I did the last 19 months when I felt it myself. Ecclesiastes Kohelet teaches there is a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to laugh and a time to cry, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Thank God the deaths from this virus are declining. There were no COVID-related deaths in BC today. We have shed many tears for all that we have been through these many months. And we have, as Jews, done what we always do with resilience from generations. We've found moments of laughter and joy in the midst of the oi, in the midst of the sorry. The time to embrace is here, or it's coming soon. Embrace it. Give extra hugs to those who surround you. Embrace this power and much needed communication with our loved ones. Hold on to it. Hold on to them like your life depends on it. Because as I learned today, in so many ways, it does. Ken Yihiratzon, may it be God's will. Amen.
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 So, please, if you know it, feel free to join me after that beautiful message. Thank you, Rabbi Dan. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
That was just perfect. I texted Cantor Cohen like an hour before the service when I had finished the sermon because I didn't know what I was going to say. I said, I'm using this verse. Do you have a song? And she pulled that right out of her toolbox. Thank you so much for that. The perfect Nechemta. We're going to continue.